Shalom Chavrim, I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. And friends, sorry about the delay on coming on this morning. This was a story that is just breaking, coming out of the Jerusalem Post. Operation Good Neighbor, something that we read about around August the 10th, I believe is when that was first shared by Israel. It was called Operation Good Neighbor. The humanitarian aid that Israel was providing to the Syrian rebels that were pinned down by the Syrian forces near its border. Now, of course, the Israeli government has always stated that they did not ask who they were affiliated with. If they were wounded, they would treat them. Of course, Tzipi Livni, who was part of the Israeli government not too long ago, in an interview on RT, stated that they would not assist Syrian military. And so the question was raised, and it's not really a humanitarian aid if that's the case. If you say that it's you don't ask who's being treated at the border, but then you deny that you would treat a Syrian soldier, then there's a bias in there. And that's clearly true. Well, the Jerusalem Post has just posted this article. Within the last about 15 minutes, IDF confirms Israel provided light weapons to Syrian rebels. Bashar al-Assad claimed that Israel had been providing arms to terror groups, and its forces had regularly seized arms and munitions with inscriptions in Hebrew. And we've shared some of that with you guys here on Israeli News Live, but we were always a bit hesitant to share as much as we really did know, because we thought perhaps it could be staged information. Maybe they put something with Hebrew writing on it to make it look as if Israel was arming the Syrian rebels. But now, the Israeli government, not holding back, admitting it. The Israeli army has admitted for the first time that it provided large amounts of cash, weapons, and ammunition to Syrian rebels in the Golan Heights, while the IDF maintains that it was not intervening in Syria's civil war. On Monday, it confirmed that as a part of the Operation Good Neighbor, Israel has been regularly supplying Syrian rebels near its border with light weapons and ammunition in order to defend themselves from attacks, and substantial amounts of cash to buy additional arms. Now, this is shocking, because those terrorists are part of the Al-Qaeda, Al-Nusra front, who are the worst of the jihadists that are in this area. And it only goes back to my thoughts that I've shared with you guys in the past or recently here about the prophet Elisha, when he goes to Damascus and the king of Syria, Ben-Hadad, inquires of the prophet, sending his servant down to see whether or not he would recover from an illness that he had. And the prophet Elisha saw that he should recover from this, but he also saw that that very Syrian that was the president's own aide would turn against him and would kill him. And of course, he was a terrorist of terrorists, even though he was a quote-unquote Syrian, and he would turn against Israel like never before. So while Israel is pretending to be good neighbors to the terrorists that are inside of Syria, that have been brought from 35 different countries to overthrow this nation, when they do get control, and I'm sure they will, and I'm sure President Bashar al-Assad, who would recover from this war, whether he's actually killed or not may not be the issue, but the fact that his nation will be destroyed, I believe, will be without question. And that they will not recover from the war, even though he would have recovered with the help of Russia. You see where the biblical prophecy really takes you when we're looking at what the truth of things are that are going on here in the Middle East? And why would my own people support terrorism? It's troubling. It will end up costing our own people their lives. And it's very sad to say. Now, I got some information out of Israel yesterday that I wanted to share with you. And I say these things because I can't say for certain, but from what I'm being told, it is Israel that was actually behind the attack on the military base near Damascus that happened just a few days ago. And that, as I was told originally about 7 days ago, the you-know-what was going to hit the fan. And that now, so to speak, the cat's out of the bag and this is about to really break loose. It looks like to me, if I can read between the lines of the information that's shared with me, is that Israel is going after the Iranian targets inside of Syria, maybe even in Iraq as well. And I was told that they will be using weapons that are both known and unknown. That's a quote, unquote for you. We'll have to wait and see exactly what happens, but as we're looking at things right now, we see that Russia, according to Amman, also BBC is already reporting this as well, has begun their long-awaited heavy bombardment on Idlib, taking and softening up the targets of the terrorists that are in that region there. The Syrian forces as well have already begun their assault. You can see here from one Twitter account here, this is Babak Havee, however you pronounce that name there. These are images coming out of Syria in the Idlib province there. People there on the ground that are actually sharing their images with us of the bombs that are dropping in the Idlib province there. There are also images showing here the Syrian fighter jet. You can see the Syrian flag on the wing here, that they're actually even hitting in the west of Idlib. Now, when you're talking about the west of Idlib, we're talking about very close to the Turkish border. And I am highly anticipating that what is going to happen in this, the attack that is going on here, is that we're probably going to see the Turkish respond against Syria. If the Turkish respond against Syria, then it will also, even without a chemical weapons attack or a staged attack, it will justify NATO intervention to protect their own partner. I find it fascinating that Russia can actually consider Turkey an ally when Turkey is the one supplying all the terrorists their weapons, and Turkey is the one that has sent in more weapons and more armored personnel carriers to help protect these terrorists in the region there. It's just beyond me as I see the things that are going on. Kremlin says Syrian army is getting ready to solve the Idlib terrorism problem. And of course, we have seen countless video footages of the Syrian military moving in massive amounts of troops into the region. And of course, Syria is still fighting other battles as well in the southern provinces of its country, liberating and making very good gains there as well. But they've really brought the majority of their fighting power to the Idlib province to liberate from the group. It's kind of interesting. I seen on RT the other day, they titled an article kind of very similar to that of what I wrote on Mike Pompeo's Twitter page when I asked him if the United States was also under a threat of terrorists that had taken over our nation, and yet we had liberated most of the nation, would be willing to leave one state out. I had asked this to Mike Pompeo, the question, you know, would you just allow that to go by the wayside? No, as Americans we would go after that one state, whether it be Alabama, New Hampshire, whatever the case may be. Well, RT also posted an article, and they used that very title, except they use Oregon as the state because their person they were interviewing made the same comment. And so, you know, no, we would not. We would not allow terrorists to keep one state. Even though you may have majority terrorists in that particular province, it doesn't mean that there's not American citizens that would be living there. So what's the difference with President Assad wanting to liberate Idlib? It's not just a matter about land. He's got Syrian civilians that live there that are not pro-terrorist. And they would love for him to liberate the land that has been taken over by all these terrorist organizations. So as troubling as things are, that's a very real scenario. Now, Trump has warned, according to Reuters and many other news agencies here, Syria has warned Syria not to recklessly attack Idlib province. Again, all these threats that are coming out from the United States, Great Britain, France, these are the three that will definitely attack Syria in the event this war begins. Now, I have noticed before, and I was thinking about this even when I made the statement the other day that Germany would join in too, but you know, maybe not. Germany may not join in for the simple reason is Germany may have to work on a different front, because if the Syrian war spreads beyond the borders of the Middle East, we could find that Germany has to help fight the battle in Ukraine. As I've mentioned before, the United States is arming now the sea and air campaign of the Ukrainian government. Russia, because of their National Day parade, of course, they're moving tons of military equipment in different parts of the regions to celebrate their 75th anniversary. But it also happens to strategically place military arms in the appropriate places, such as near Ukraine, in the event of a global catastrophe from the Middle East. There are threats already too that Israel is going to attack Iraq to take out missiles that have been moved there from Iran. They have alleged that Iran has moved missiles into Iraq, which I can believe that to be true, and that Israel is going to take out those weapons there as well as all targets inside of Syria. If Israel actually makes those advances, Israel will definitely need help, whether it be from the United States, whether it be from the Saudis, and I think this is one reason why Donald Trump sold so much weapons to the Saudis, because the Saudis will help to fight against Iran. So we could easily see a global war break loose. And what kind of weapons does Israel have, both known and unknown? And we're not talking about a source that I have that doesn't know what goes on. It's just he is very mindful of his Israeli secrecy. He's not going to divulge secrets or anything like that. But once it is at least being made known in the media there, he can share things with me. This is the picture I was wanting to share with you guys the other day. This is the camps that are right there. The wall you see there is the Turkish border, where the Turks have placed a concrete barrier with razor ribbon on top to prevent the refugees from leaving the country of Syria and coming into their own country, which they're able to get over. Some of them are going into Turkey. But this is what they believe will cause a humanitarian crisis, that the Syrian government is going to bomb all these little villages here, are these small little tent communities along the border. I don't see Syria bombing places like this, but it's interesting how mainstream media makes it appear that that's what will happen next. It's troubling, but the campaign has begun, and as it begins, how many days will it be before we see a false flag chemical attack? We see a Syrian or even a Russian plane down by Turkey, and then there'd be a retaliatory response. You know, speaking of retaliatory response, even Turkey has, I thought I had this actually up, has their naval fleet in the Mediterranean. And that's something that caught my attention, is the fact that they have moved their own naval fleet into, it's not, I thought I could find it, I had the article up yesterday, that they actually moved their naval fleet, let me see, into the Mediterranean as well. And it's as if the NATO allies have decided to make Turkey the sitting duck. Here's one right here. In response to Russian Navy exercises, Turkish Navy started a small firing exercise in South Turkey, Mediterranean Sea, 30 minutes ago. This was brought out yesterday. Air Force's E-7T AEWAC monitors the area while several F-16s, Ds, and 132 A-152 Milo have combat air patrol. So Turkey is also there in the Mediterranean, as Russia has its major firepower there. And I just have got a very bad feeling that Turkey will play the bad guy in here. They will do something to either take down a Syrian plane, something that will justify a crash with Turkey that may justify NATO's actions in coming to the aid of their NATO partner that has been siding with Russia this whole time, and giving more reason to take out President Bashar al-Assad, especially if Assad fights back against the Turkish military, which is something that they do not want to do. And Russia has been trying to keep that played down. But you just never know what's going to happen. And of course, the other issue comes down to is Ukraine and what's happening over there near Donetsk. This is another hot spot in the area there, because the military actions, the buildup of military there in the region is really growing. In fact, we got right here, Russia attacks Ukraine, Horlovka Donetsk Oblast base. New constructions, the rounds, the silos, we were replaced, roof in the parking, also 2 kinds of armored vehicles. So, you know, they're constantly putting out information here showing the troop movements, the things that are happening there. And it's on both sides, both Russia and Ukraine. And by the way, I did not mention this on the news the other day. Let me just see if I can pull this up again. We have the U.S. generals in Ukraine. And let me just see if I can actually find this. This was something that I just saw. Here we go, right here, yes. Devon Intel. My main focus until further notice will be Ukraine and Syria. Russia is either acting all tough and making it look like they're going to take and invade Ukraine and then do nothing, or this may actually be the real deal. I am monitoring this. Okay, no, I had gotten the information, and I forget where I got it from, but there are actually U.S. generals that are in Ukraine. And when I saw this, I mean, that's a troubling issue. When we have U.S. generals actually inside of Ukraine, then something is definitely going on. I'll go into this a little bit later. I don't want to hold you guys up that are listening there, but I'll come back to that, because it just seems to me that there are rapidly growing tensions in the Ukrainian province there. Listen, you guys that follow us here on Israeli News Live, if you want, you can also follow us here on Twitter, Israeli News Live at Stephen Danoon. I use my pen name there. The way I write books is Danoon instead of Benoon. But follow us there on Twitter. I don't always post personally. I do a lot of retweets, and what I retweet doesn't mean that I agree with the people that I retweet. It's just things that I see that I think are of interest, and so we do put that out there for people to see. But love for you to join over there. Occasionally we actually run a video on there that you never even see here on Israeli News Live. I am set up with the app on my phone where I can broadcast live on Twitter, and sometimes a little short breaking news I'll post over there. In fact, I'll probably do that a little bit more often. And I am working also on a message for Patreon that'll probably be coming out either today or tomorrow. So those of you that follow us on patreon.com/Israeli News Live, we are going to be looking at a subject. I don't want to discuss it here, but I think it'll be of a great interest to many of you there. Anyway, I'm Stephen Benoon. You're watching Israeli News Live. Shalom, shalom today in a world of Ein Shalom. That's certainly the truth. It is truly a war of Ein Shalom. So God bless all of you for watching. And moderators, thank you so much for your kindness and being here. It seems like that YouTube is not quite banning everything that we put out today. We actually have 1,500 people watching here live. So I'm glad to see so many of you here. Again, we're going to be watching really closely this situation, especially with Israel being involved. I understand Israel is trying to defend its borders with an Iranian threat. I understand those issues there, but at the same time, I feel like that a lot of these threats have been created by our government. But like Simon Tov said when he was here on Israeli News Live, he's an Israeli born in Israel back many, many years ago when Israel was a very young nation. And he said that Netanyahu is the man for the job. But he said, I don't mean that in a good way. He said he's the kind of guy that will cause the nations to come against us by his actions as a politician. And I think that's exactly what's going to happen. And even though we know biblical prophecy talks about the demise of Israel, and we know the prophecy that speaks about, what is it, a third or two-thirds of the people would die in a battle. You know, it's terrible to see these things, and we know these are prophecies that have not been fulfilled as of yet. But I can see our actions could actually bring that upon ourselves. And the same thing we've done in Syria. We have backed a terrorist organization that is bent on removing Assad, the one man that has been friendly to our nation. His father wasn't, but Bashar al-Assad has been friendly with Israel, trying to keep a peace with us of some sorts. Not the best, but of some sorts. He would have recovered, but he's not going to. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun with Israeli News Live. Erev Tov.